Okay, let's figure out. Here I am. Wow, we haven't done this in such a long time. I'm sorry we're a little bit late, but we're here, and that's all that counts. Welcome to Canvas and Currents, the only program on the entire internet where you get both Canvas and Currents. Don't fall for the cheap copies that give you just one of them. I'm going to explain in a moment what that is, but first I want to introduce my colleague and friend Julius on camera too. Hey, this is Julius.
Hello, everyone.
Julius is an award-winning artist, and I have my notes here where I could totally introduce you with all the things that you do, but needless to say, Julius is a man of all media. He's pretty much everywhere. You can find him in museums. His work has been published on stamps, in
probably
books.
Interpol, wherever, yeah.
Probably all kinds of blacklists and red lists. Especially no travel lists, definitely. Exactly. Once I managed to find the button that I'm sure these buttons do something. Ha! Now we can see us both. Wow, this is so professional.
We're even totally shuffling over the screen and everything. This is half the fun right there,
This is half the fun. So to all the people that are watching, no matter where you're watching from, I can see that a whole bunch of people are watching. Thank you so much to the people of the Marine Mammal Rescue live stream, which are serving as moderators on probably various channels.
Sorry. Oh my God, sorry.
Yeah,
didn't expect that to happen, but okay, there we go.
This is live. Like I promised, the whole thing. Like we haven't.
It's a bloopers.
We haven't recorded anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Julius basically fell off the plane straight into the studio this afternoon.
I fell very slowly through some rush hour traffic. That's the problem. I don't think "fell" is really the right term for that because there was no motion there.
Right. I have to figure out. This is me. This is Julius. Okay, we're figuring all this out in real time, so you can be part of the whole experience, basically. So what are we doing on Canvas and Currents? This is a program where art meets whatever this is, really.
What is this?
I don't know.
What is this really?
It's episode 4. We still haven't figured out, right? You can submit your answers to that question in chat. Let me know what you think this is, and I'd love to find out. Anyway, we're going to talk about the cool species. That's what we do every single time, right? I barely remember the last time we were on air.
I know. It was like an age ago. I think it was the Pleistocene, maybe. So, I think it was the last. We did the harbor porpoise last, didn't we?
We did. Yes, that was episode 3. Yes.
Goodness, that's been a while. Oh, wow.
It's been so long ago.
And then we were going to do sperm whales. We have to do that yet because those are cool animals. But you took a vote.
We took a vote. We asked the Marine Rescue community, and they came up with narwhals. A close second was nudibranchs.
That would have been fun too, and that we're going to have to do that because I had all kind of planned out that if we're going to do nudibranchs, or the sea slugs, I could have had like this really colorful montage of different kinds. Not really necessarily all from the same location, but it would have been pretty colorful. So that'd be a fun one as well, actually. But
I'm still trying to figure out which camera we're going to use. So, the species, done. We have to let you know about the species. We have a there really is a species. So every single time we have a program here, we talk about one species in particular, and we pick narwhals. And Julius, you're gonna do something. You wanted to do charcoal. Yes. Is that what you're doing?
It's gonna be an interesting bit. This is water-soluble graphite powder. So the neat thing about this is that I'm going to be able to paint it on. It's basically like the stuff that you have in your pencils, right? But this is a powder, and what's interesting about it is it's going to be able to be painted. So I've got watercolor paper. That seemed like the most reasonable thing to go with, and that's going to hold it well, I think. And I'll be able to do a combination of dry brushing it, and also using a little bit of water to dilute it. So this should be a really fun thing. And full disclosure, I've never done this before. So you'll see it here for the first time.
What a surprise. That is totally not the theme that they're going with.
No, not at all. Yeah, we're not winging it or anything.
Yes. And one of the other aspects of this program is we like to talk about conservation. We like to talk about the species a little bit. And narwhals are certainly like a very fascinating species. There's only 2 of them in that group. There's beluga whales, and then basically a different color version of beluga whale with a big tusk.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that narwhal and belugas sometimes hybridize, and so you actually have some evidence of a hybrid between the two that has intermediate features. So they've have evidence of some remains of hybridized individuals. So very cool.
That's fascinating. That's something I didn't know.
They're called narlugas. That's it. No, it's true. They're actually called narlugas, the hybrids.
Narlugas.
That's like so creative. I know, right? It's the best. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There is a camera that does show your desk. That is your setup. It's one of them. We have another one. This is this one.
Oh wow! Look at that.
We can.
This beautiful paper. This nice watercolor paper.
This one moves.
Oh my God! Look at that. You've got like a remote on it. Wow! You can zoom right in. Look at this.
Right.
I can hide nothing.
Nothing.
You'll see my hangnails and everything.
So many. There's cameras everywhere. And if you're wondering what the setup looks like, this is what Julius' setup really looks like.
This is actually what my head looks like, though. That's the thing. No, not many people know this, but when you see like that sort of a biological face, it's actually been pasted on. This is not real.
That's all CGI.
No, that's total CGI. Exactly.
We haven't spared any expenses here. This is like the super high quality production.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my God. Yes. Well.
Okay, so I guess what are we gonna do? I have to remember where this button is to get this here on the air. We're gonna paint an narwhal.
Yes, we will.
Are we calling this painting? You are painting.
I guess we will. I think so because even if it's using just the dry powder, it's going to be basically dry brushing, and so it's going to be a form of painting. Absolutely. But I'm going to take us through it like from the initial stages of sort of doing the outline of it in light pencil and then painting over it with this graphite powder. So it's going to be interesting. And you know what's going to happen? As soon as I open it, things are going to explode all over the place, right? That's the first stage probably. And then we're going to have a lot of black on the surface of this beautiful paper.
We're probably not going to see it, but probably going to be on the wrong camera at that time because as the online audience can see, I'm still learning how to press the right buttons for all these things.
Oh my
God! My excuse is we haven't done this since.
Yes. When was the last
International Save the Vaquita Day? You were here.
Oh yes, that's right. That was what? August? I think it was August, September, something like that.
September, even last
that's
year.
it.
So
oh my God, it's been a while, and we didn't do a Canvas and Currents episode. Since then, actually. It was before that.
October 2023, actually. Yeah.
Almost 2 years. Whoa, it's been too long. Okay, yeah.
They were holding Julius hostage. He has only recently been released. And
that's right.
It's been a while.
Oh my God.
Okay, so your setup. Okay. Can you walk us through your setup? You've got the powder. That's the mysterious powder.
This is the
I'm
powder.
Surprised you got this through security. They didn't ask me.
I was wondering if it would, but that never was a problem. I guess it's not liquid, and I looked it up, and like powders are not something that they have a problem with. It's gels and liquids, right, above 100 milliliters. So I kind of took a bit of a risk, but I guess I could have picked up some more here if it came to that. I suppose.
Right.
I would have been sad to say goodbye to this though. But yes, I've got the powder, and then I've got my range of brushes here actually, and none of these brushes are meant specifically for graphite because nobody paints with graphite, right? These are various kinds of brushes, but I'm going to use them for different purposes, and I've got a trusty water here to use to create a little bit more of a watercolor-like feel, and of course I've also got my regular pencils, which I can use to actually do a rough outline of it first. But I think the fun part's going to happen when we're going to break open these brushes and start to actually like play around with the graphite that way. So yes, this is very nicely composed here now, but they're going to go to good use in a moment here. So narwhal. This is okay, or narwhals. We talked about this before in terms of what's the plural, and yeah, it's true. I thought it was narwhal, but then everywhere I look, it's narwhals.
But I think you were actually right. Narwhal is actually the plural. It's like in porpoise and porpoise.
Yeah, right.
Also the plural. Yes, but I looked at how people were spelling it, and I was like, National Geographic says narwhals.
Nobody knows the real thing.
Right.
Yeah,
nobody knows.
That's it. Yeah, everybody's misinformed. We're the only ones that know the real truth.
We're the only program telling you the truth. Like. Yes,
exactly. You heard it here first, and only here accurately. Exactly.
It's the only program that tells you the truth. Wow. I should mention that no matter where you're watching from, we're on various YouTube channels and on Twitch. I think there is live live audio transcription, also available on YouTube if you have trouble with hearing. Any disability support is available on YouTube.
Well, this is good.
And we're there on the Marine Mammal Rescue channel, as well as on the Porpoise Conservation Society channel. This is a co-production of the Porpoise Conservation Society and the BC Marine Mammal Rescue Society. I should have mentioned that at some point.
Yeah, these are great organizations, by the way. It's always nice to be involved with some of these. I enjoy being involved with conservation organizations. And I mean, we've been involved in one way or another with you and with the Porpoise Conservation Society for quite a long time now, actually.
Over a decade, yeah. We celebrated our 10th birthday, I think, this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Julius, if he's not here, he's usually chained to a bank somewhere protesting. and I'm joking,
right.
but also not.
You're not. It
is true.
We did a protest of the Royal Bank, which is really, really bad among the big banks for investment in fossil fuels. And so, yes, we did actually have some of those events happen as well a few years ago. But yes, I've been involved in all kinds of different protests to stand up for what we need to do to protect our ecosystems, and I mean these kinds of outreach events here are good too, because we are hoping to spread the word about who needs protection and how we can do it. Knowing about them in the first place is the first step, right? And then knowing how to draw them is of course very, very important as well, so that you can illustrate your letters that you send to the government, right?
And that's right. Letters.
I always advocate for that.
Yeah.
It's fun. Here we go.
So I want to mention, no matter where you're watching from, it doesn't really matter whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook or on Twitch. Are we somewhere else? Oh yeah, LinkedIn. If you're watching on LinkedIn, hey, all the professionals watching on LinkedIn, all my work colleagues, like no matter who's watching, I don't know. I thought they're professionals there.
I guess so.
I'm never.
Right?
Yeah. Anyhow, no matter where you're watching from, if you use the comments function or the chat function there, your messages are going to get straight through our studio. I can read everything that you're saying. Liz Kendall is saying our local museum had a wonderful narwhal exhibit earlier this year.
Which museum?
If you could let us know.
Was it maybe the Beatty Museum? No, that's a smaller one, but
it could be all over the planet, really.
But you're right. Actually, you're right. Our local museum, that's true. This can be all kinds of places. This is a good point. Yes, absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, your work is displayed in a whole bunch of places.
It's getting there. We just had an opening of a new exhibit at the Museum of the Rockies, actually in Montana. I illustrated several murals for them on late Cretaceous life from dinosaurs and so on, and so that one is another one that's new, and there's all sorts of new ones coming up. Just had a recent image appear in the news, National Geographic and various, about dinosaurs. There's evidence from trackways that they actually traveled in herds of multiple species, it seems. Ceratopsians as well as ankylosaurs, and so I did an image for that, so that's kind of out there now. It's kind of fun to see these bits of research being highlighted this way, and it's kind of fun to be able to be involved at the tail end of it by creating artwork too.
And I missed that from the introduction. Julius is not just any random artist. He is a paleo artist, so most of your career is, or like a significant chunk of it, is made up of bringing to life species that have roamed this planet a very, very long time ago.
Beyond reckoning. Yes.
That's based on science.
Yes.
You're imagining what they would have looked like.
That's the idea. The best educated guess that we can make, basically, with the available evidence. And so lots of fun that way, because there's still some room for guessing and artistic license, but less and less so, and in some areas very little, because we even know the color of some dinosaurs based on properties of their subcellular structure. So,
that's crazy.
Very cool stuff. Absolutely.
But basically, whenever you see a news report about a new paper that came out, and they need a visual to go with it, there's a good chance it might be one of Julius's pieces to
it has been sometimes
illustrate, because there's literally no other way. It's what we do with living spaces like the Vaquita as well, right?
Exactly.
We have no other choice because there's so few left.
That's right. We need to do artwork to be able to visualize a lot of species, especially the ones that are no longer around. So here's the thing. So narwhal, right? Let's get into the meat of it, right? Narwhal are cool. So narwhal, the name, I believe it comes from maybe a Norwegian root. It means basically corpse whale. Kind of a really unflattering name, but it's because the animal is mottled. It's like a light color mottled with black and brown kind of things. And yeah, you could be forgiven for thinking it's a dead corpse floating at the surface, partly because they also do this thing called logging. They just sit at the surface for long periods of time without moving. So yeah, they could look a bit like a bloated corpse. They have this very sort of torpedo-like thick body, and they they actually might look a little bit like a corpse to some people if you're not sure. But I'm going to be painting this one sort of near surfacing. And one of the neat things about this species of whale, it's one of the toothed whales, but oddly enough, it has very few actual functional teeth. It lives largely in the very, very far north, often in the Arctic Ocean. And so through much of its lifespan, it has to find its way underneath ice and look for breathing holes. And so in the summer, they find areas that are shallower and ice-free. And then actually, right around now, July, August, they're having babies. So there are baby narwhal showing up in the north now. So that's kind of when they start being born. And right, because they are mammals, they are born. There's no eggs or anything like that. They're not fish. And in the winter, they will move underneath ice in some cases, but still have to maintain access to the air above, because of course they breathe air like us, right? They are mammals. And so I'm going to draw this one. So I'm just kind of putting in a little bit of a outline for the ice. There's ice flows. These are closing up gradually. So this narwhal is going to be making its way to more open water, but it has to carefully negotiate and navigate its way through these ice flows and make sure that it doesn't have too much distance between breathing holes. And I think it's something like a few hundred meters or maybe a little over a kilometer that they can maintain between breathing holes and still make it. But unfortunately, sometimes they don't. And if they are actually stuck without access to a breathing hole, they can drown. And so they have to be super careful about this. But so we're going to put the narwhal here sort of heading kind of toward us. And then making sure that I leave enough room for the tusk. Because that's what's so cool about this whale, right? They are nicknamed often the unicorns of the sea because they have this crazy weird tusk coming out of the front of their snout. And they don't have much of a snout. They have a melon. And the melon, of course, like on belugas and other echolocating whales, it's a very, very thick, fatty area on the front of their head. It's very rounded. And it's basically an echo chamber where they can generate sound pulses and then receive the reflections of those sound pulses from their environment. And those sound pulses are then interpreted by the whale after the muscles in its melon kind of focus the sound, and it can interpret what the nature of that sound says about its environment after it's reflected from the environment. So these guys have a very large rounded melon, that front of that sort of just above the snout. And from the bottom of that, just above the mouth, they've got this craziest looking tusk. And that's what really these guys, what gives them everything that's famous about them, basically. What we know about them is this weird tusk. And the stranger thing about this is it's not a horn like, in a rhino or whatever. There's many kinds of horns, right? So dinosaurs had horns, many kinds did. Ceratopsians, for example, the horned dinosaurs, they had horns, and it's a bony core that grew out, and then a layer of keratin, like fingernail or horn, grew on top of it to make it even longer. Rhinos don't have bony cores to their horns. They just have keratin, the same stuff that makes up our fingernails and our hair. And so their skulls don't show a horn, actually. But narwhal are different. This is not a horn that's growing out of their face. It's a tooth. It's a crazily long canine tooth. And in most of them, it's the left canine, just slightly left of center. And so you have it's maybe slightly offset, but it's pretty well centered. But it's a crazy long tooth that's spiraling. And there are a few rare individuals, and I've seen this. I've seen a skull in, I think it was the National History Museum in London, of a narwhal in which both of the teeth grew out as a tusk. And so it's actually got two tusks in the front of its face. So it's really weird and neat looking. But most narwhal we see, and this is generally for the males, very few females actually get a tusk. The males mostly have this tusk. So I guess we're looking mostly at a male here. Most of them have one tusk, and it's from the left side of the face, basically. And so if you look at it, I've got it ever so slightly on the left side of this animal. And it's kind of coming toward us. This tusk is huge. They get bigger with time. They don't lose them like the antlers of elk, for example. They just grow longer. And they can grow up to about 1.5 to 3 meters long. That's like 10 feet. These things are huge. That's taller than your room, probably, usually. And
I can't imagine going through life like that. And interacting socially and just making sure you don't poke somebody.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got your eye again. Oh, it is a big hazard, though, right? And narwhal are sometimes found with injuries caused by these tusks. I mean, no wonder. But the function of these has been debated, and it seems like the best ideas are that it has to do with some kind of sexual selection, right? It's like, look at me, I'm so good genetically because I've got this enormously long horn. And a lot of animals do this. They have parts of them that they show off, and that are really good indicators maybe of their genetic suitability for having kids. And narwhal have this incredibly long tusk. And so anyway, that's one possibility. They also actually have been seen to smack fish with it, so it might also be kind of partly a weapon for hunting. But
of course,
they don't chew on fish. They're interesting. They have this enormous tooth. There's a tusk, but the rest of their teeth are so tiny they're basically non-functional. So what they end up doing is they come up to fish and they open their mouth really fast and they suck the fish in. It's suction feeding. So actually, that's some whales do this.
That's what porpoises do as well. Like,
there we go.
Negative pressure in the mouth.
You
just suck it in. It's
like
and then swallow it whole.
Because these guys can't chew. Now porpoises actually have more functional teeth than these guys, right?
Yeah, but I guess they also primarily just use it to hold on to stuff because fish is kind of slippery.
Right, so it's not like chewing. You're not chewing it, so you're not slicing it up necessarily.
No.
Like orcas and others have really massive teeth, so they can actually process things effectively or grab them and hold them well. But narwhal, no. I mean, and actually, interestingly, narwhal, their evolutionary history indicates that they diverged from the lineage that was common with porpoises some time ago, several million years. And I believe the whole porpoise, narwhal, beluga, clade diverged something like 11 million years ago from other toothed whales. And then they diverged from porpoises, it looks like about 4 or 5 million years ago, maybe.
Whenever you think about like millions of years, I'm always like I'm very, very confused. I think porpoises diverged from from dolphins 15 million years ago. Like, that's when they had the last common ancestor.
Okay, I got it. So
don't quote me on that. I'm not the scientist. This is the stuff I used to tell people. That doesn't necessarily make it true. So
so it's been a while. I guess you could say that. It's been a while. So here we go. So the other thing is here, you'll notice as I'm drawing this tusk here, I'm kind of going slowly here, but we want to set it up right. I'm putting a spiral pattern on it because narwhal, the way that the tusk grows out, this tooth grows out, it's actually spiraling. And I'm
trying to figure out which camera captures that best. This is the camera right above you, and that oddly enough is struggling the most. It's the one right above you, like literally over your head. That one.
Nice. So you've got quite a few options here. I mean, Marcus has done an incredible job of generating
As many cameras as I
oh my
can
God.
humanly fit into the room, and then still none of them really does the job.
Well, I mean, from what I can see, and yeah, it's looking good. It's looking like you're capturing a lot of detail here. So this is good. So you can see this massive melon, this big rounded forehead, basically. That's where it generates. That's where what helps to focus the sound that it uses that it generates for echolocation. Because like a lot of other cetaceans, or whales, or especially toothed whales, they can generate these clicks and knocking sounds and squeaks and such that are used not just for communication with each other, but also as pulses of energy that cause the water to compress as they go and then bounce off other surfaces, and they can locate objects and even figure out things about the shape of these objects when they read the reflections of the sound. So they are capable of echolocation. And I mean, that's important if you're living in an environment that is very open. It's an open ocean. You can't see that far. They don't have very large eyes. They're pretty poor vision. So they're relying on this particular form of kind of like a hybrid between vision and sound. It's or hearing. It's hearing technically, but they're generating kind of images, sound images. And so it's a really interesting way of learning about your environment. And so you have these tiny little eyes, and the eye is just back here behind the mouth and close to the same level. It's just a tiny little eye. You can barely see it. In fact, it's easier to locate the eye by observing the pattern of blotches of color around it, which tend to kind of radiate outward from the eye to some extent.
Do you think we can?
Look at that! Yeah, you got this.
We can.
Cool. Yeah.
Good luck getting that.
Yeah, exactly. I'll try to weave it through your equipment here. So, yeah, Marcus brought along. This is a publication that I illustrated, actually. It's this Discovering Whales, Dolphins, and Porpoises. It seems appropriate for there's a big sperm whale in the front there. And it's got this cool texture.
Yeah, I just want to say it's more of an experience than just a regular book. So.
It's multi-sensory. Yeah, we're talking about narwhal being able to generate sonic visuals of their environment. But yes, this book is kind of like that. So here's an example of this is the narwhal that I painted for the book, actually. And if you look closer to the camera here, I'm trying to think in reverse here because it's an interesting reversal of. Anyway, yeah, they're close enough. Right there, that's the eye.
I have
there you go. Yeah.
This one as well. So that tiny, is this camera.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, tiny. You can barely even see the eye. It's in this blotch of color. Actually, It's a tiny eye, and then you can see the huge tusk sticking out the front there. And again, the very very rounded melon of the whale.
You basically you can barely make out the eye.
It's really tiny. It's really tiny. It's not that important for vision is not a big deal. Oh, and right next to it, of course, you can see the beluga. That's their closest living relative.
This one.
And it's a baby beluga and an adult. Of course, the song goes through my head now, right?
Those folds, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of like with seals. The babies have those folds still on their bodies not long after they're born. I remember when I volunteered at the Marine Mammal Rescue Center, we saw some of the youngest seals, and they would still have those little folds on their body. Really adorable. And so these are closely related whales, and both of them have this interesting function that they have very mobile cervical vertebrae in their neck. Right. And that allows them to turn their head a lot more than any other kinds of cetaceans. So they can actually do a lot of interesting head movements.
Yeah, you can't see that type of articulation in like any other like living mammal. Right. No other cetacean can do that. I don't know
if there are any porpoises. Are there in this porpoise? I don't think so. I think that's the most. Yeah, I think this is the most adept they are that any cetacean is at moving their head and their neck. So they're kind of neat that way. Also, you notice they don't have any dorsal fin, right, on their back. That actually makes sense because if anything, any animal that is living in an environment where they have to navigate immediately under ice flows, it makes it a lot easier not to have this dorsal fin poking up and scratching at the ice as you're passing through. If you're having to be able to find these air holes. You want to get really close to the ice, so not having a dorsal fin makes sense. And they're not that fast swimmers anyway. It's not like they need it for stabilization that much, right? They're not sprinters.
Can you imagine you're a narwhal and you have this giant tusk, and then you have to navigate to the surface where there's potentially like an ice cover, and then but you can't go straight up because you're gonna hurt your tusk.
Exactly. Oh, that's the
Thing
other
is
thing.
full of nerves, right?
That's
so it's not that you don't feel it.
That's right.
You don't want to collide with like a sheet of ice. That's going to hurt.
Absolutely, and that's actually brings up a good point. You mentioned there are many nerve endings there. One of the ideas is they may actually use their tusk partly to sample water temperature, for example. So they can learn something about their environment. It's kind of like a giant cat whisker, basically. So that's another thing. And so you need to have a breathing hole that's big enough for it, first of all, to be able to stick their head through it. And of course, you got this tusk at the end as well. So it's something like, I think the breathing holes have to be at least something like 50 centimeters across or a little bit bigger than that. I mean, enough for our narwhal's head to stick through because there are blowholes on the top behind their head. So that needs to be where they breathe from, right?
Yeah.
They can't breathe through their mouth. It's not connected to their lungs that way. It has to be the blowhole. They're different from us that way. We can breathe through our mouth, or our nose, but they have separate passages that way. And they don't have nostrils per se. They've got that blowhole on top. So fascinating evolution of mammals to an aquatic existence. And so we're fortunate enough to be able to see these alive. And actually, it's really nice. For once, we've dealt with a lot of highly endangered species in these broadcasts, but narwhal, fortunately for now, are in the least concern category of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN, which means that they don't seem to be in any immediate danger. They have something like, I believe it was over 123,000 individuals in the world. So it's half decent. Still nothing like, I mean, like some of our big cities, we have like 1 million people, right? So it's still nothing compared to that. But it seems to be relatively stable.
We used to dealing, once a year we do International Save the Vaquita Day, and we do a similar event, and then we're talking about like, potentially 8 or 10 animals left.
That's really heavy to deal with. That's always the hardest thing to I mean, we do what we can for outreach to get people to help out with spreading the word to somehow save these animals. And there's so many things we can do, but it is a very emotionally weighty program to do that way, because we're dealing with animals that are fewer than the number of fingers that most of us have on our hands probably in these days. And yet they still have this incredible resilience. So if we lighten the pressure on them from becoming entangled in nets set by poachers, they actually have an actual real chance at recovery. Narwhal, fortunately, are not there. But we should be careful, because remember the passenger pigeon. That was the most numerous bird probably in North America. And within a couple of decades, or I don't know how long, very short time, they went to extinction through hunting. With narwhal, they are hunted, but not in large numbers. It's mostly indigenous hunting, and the vast majority of them are used. So it's a wonderfully efficient way. It's not something that is done like at crazy levels of industry. And a lot of the hunting is for traditional purposes, not for like absolute necessity. So it's actually not a big impact on them. So that's okay. The biggest issue probably is climate change. And that's because you have almost certainly encountered a lot of news about how much of the Arctic sea ice is vanishing. And that's an important component of their environment in the winter. And it's very important for the ecosystems on which they survive, the fish that they hunt. So they need to have ice present at certain times of the year. If you completely lose all of that ice, it's going to put them at great danger. And so even though they have tens of thousands or over 100,000 individuals today, that could change very, very rapidly if we lose all the ice in the Arctic. So it's still a very, very serious issue.
I recall from we used to both volunteer around the bigger sphere of the Vancouver Aquarium here in Vancouver. And I recall whenever they talked about the ice, they talked about the ice as a substrate, basically for algae.
Yes.
Basically the bottom of the food chain or food web.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, that's a good point. That's one of the major reasons why it is so important. Underneath, so this ice that we're seeing from below here, basically this is a big sort of a crevice in it, but underneath the surface, there's enough light that penetrates through it because it's translucent, that algae will grow on the bottom of the ice. They're autotrophs, which means that they, basically generate their own food, their own reduced carbon source food from photosynthesis. And it's kind of like land plants that serve as the basis for food webs in terrestrial ecosystems. They are the very first, link in the chain of reduced carbon, of organic carbon that enters ecosystems. They generate the first of it, and of course herbivores then feed on them. So the herbivorous fish in this case, or even invertebrates, and then on several chains down, larger and larger fish that are predatory will feed on the herbivorous ones or the herbivorous invertebrates, and then carnivorous fish feed on those fish. And of course, some of those carnivorous fish are the ones that narwhal feed on, like flounder, I believe there's a couple of others. Anyway, flounder is one of them. And I'm not sure if pollock was one. Anyway, I should know this, but there are several species on which they feed. And so it's very important to have these ecosystems functional right from the initial production of reduced carbon, organic carbon, up to supporting these herbivorous and then carnivorous fish, and on which the narwhal then feed. So, it's all connected. And this is something we need to learn and to very much understand, that you can't just save one species. You can't just put all the effort into saving one species and expect that that's it, it's safe. Yeah. We have to work together to protect entire ecosystems, functional ecosystems, because it is only with a functional ecosystem that you will have the structural complexity that can stabilize and make safe the species that survive within it, because they're all interdependent. There you go. Okay. Big spiel on ecology there. Yes.
It's not the most cheerful program. We try to make it as cheerful as humanly possible. Yes. Like, honestly, we try. But the whole topic, Jodis and I, when we wake up, we usually think about one disaster or the other.
Yes.
Whether it's a humanitarian one or one affecting the planet's various ecosystems, but most of it is not very pleasant. But we're very cheerful.
Well, the thing is, it's very important to remember. So we cannot allow ourselves to give in to despair, because that is like when we throw in the towel and we think, oh, it's too late. That's when we're really more doomed. We're actually not. It's not too late. And we've heard recently quotes from people, even David Suzuki, saying things like that. It's too late. We're doomed. Just remember, even some of the best informed people can have basically emotional meltdowns. We're all affected by this, but it's not actually too late. There are many things we can do to protect and make safe ecosystems, and many of them are very resilient, which doesn't give us the license to go crazy and devastate them. But we still have time to be able to put effort into it to protect things. So giving into despair is not productive, and it's definitely the wrong thing to do. And there is a reason not to. We deal with, as we were talking about just before, the International Save the Vaquita Day. We're following how this species of porpoise has gone down from hundreds or thousands of individuals down to individual, single digits. But we see that they are still resilient. So if we can put the effort into removing the pressure from them that some individuals of our species do, they actually do have a chance. And we've demonstrated through things like the work on the ozone hole that we can cooperate at a multinational level. We're capable of doing that. We've demonstrated that already. We actually can do this. people are saying, oh, well, let's see if we can, terraform Mars. Well, that's silly because if we can terraform Mars, we can terraform Earth back to what it should be. It's a lot easier, and it's possible.
We have an actual atmosphere and stuff.
We actually
breathe.
do still, yes. And yes, we have done damage, and there will be more damage, but you know what? It's not hopeless. And if there's anything that you can take away from any of these broadcasts and stuff that we do, please remember that, is that there is reason not to despair. Yes, we need to take things seriously. Yes, we need to act with urgency, but no, it is not too late. This is very true. We've seen it for many, many reasons. And now that we've got this outline of the narwhal set up, kind of passing close to us here, it's sort of a half-grown one, so its tusk is not full length maybe. I've had to kind of give it a slightly shorter one because, with this sort of slightly face-on view, if it was a really long tusk, you wouldn't really see much of the animal itself. So it's a slightly intermediate age whale.
I'm looking at this camera here, which is set to automatically follow you, and I can't get the tracking mode off. But it has found a great perspective and it loves that, so it just stays on that perspective forever. And if we ever need to show you from that perspective, we totally can.
Very important. Yeah, get that. Make sure you get the pores in my face accurately because there's enough there. Right? Oh my God! So this is new. I mean, this is I've never done this before. It's the first time I'm reaching into this.
Oh wow!
Container,
yeah.
We need
to. Right. I just want to say we need to.
This is it.
Divert a little bit of attention to the
Absolutely.
fact that we've never done this before, and you're actually doing it now.
Do we have like music we can do, like the 2001? I don't know.
Space
This is a small step for man. I don't even remember the words of Armstrong.
A small stroke for Julius.
Yes. Yeah, I'm having a stroke here. Okay, so this is now the graphite on the paintbrush as I make a mess here. And I'm going to start painting onto the whale and its environment. I should probably start with the environment first and see how it goes.
And again, this is charcoal.
Nope, this is graphite.
Oh, graphite.
Yep.
Sorry.
Close. It's the stuff that's in your pencils. And so what you can see is I'm just kind of, this is dry. This is not with water yet. So it's like, imagine taking a pencil and filing down some of the end of it. Whoops. And then just spreading it around like the powder. It's just graphite powder. It's another interesting medium. Neat thing about it is because it's graphite, you can actually erase it too. You need to. Some of it. So some of it, not all of it. You can actually create light spaces. So that's what I'm going to do partly to put highlights on the ice. I'm going to do that. But in addition to that, we can also add some water and make it spread it around that way. And my guess is that what's going to happen when I do that is going to make it a much harsher, sharper kind of a line, basically, or something. But what I'm doing here also is you'll see that I'm coloring around the animal. So I'm creating negative space here, basically, with this, and using the absence of the graphite to define the position of the whale, basically. And then
you've done something. I think it was just pencil, right? When you did that the last time. In the
what was
past
that?
Was something.
Goodness, it's been a while. What was the last thing I did? Yeah, I think it was something like that. Anyway, we've explored a couple of different mediums here.
When I said initially, like, Julius is a man of all media, I meant that in many different senses.
Yeah. I love working with all kinds of different things. I started my career with watercolors, and I don't mean like large-scale landscapes. I mean very highly detailed little watercolor vignette images of dinosaurs for encyclopedia type of books. That was fun actually to do. And then I worked with acrylics and pastels, pencil, ink. I keep wanting to get back into oils. I haven't done that in a while, but it's really nice. And now working with graphite powder, and it's kind of interesting. It feels neat. It's very workable, and you keep spreading it around, and it's kind of like working with a pencil, but it's like you don't get that harshness of it making lines on the medium or on the paper. It just kind of gradually flows over, and you can actually work it for a while. I like the feeling of it, actually. So I've actually also brought some other sized brushes. So like this bigger one here would be kind of good for spreading around, and maybe I should just do that for the background, right? Gives me a faster moving, ability to move faster with this graphite over the background. And yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a neat feeling. Oh, by the way, I'm using watercolor paper to put it on for two reasons. One, because it's a water-soluble graphite, and I'll want to add some water to some parts of it to, what's the word? Oh God, apply. That's a big word. And the other reason is because watercolor paper has a tooth. It's got this sort of texture, rougher texture, and that is likely to hold on to the graphite particles better than a smooth paper, and so it's going to be more stable on the surface. So I've got a couple of reasons why I chose watercolor paper for this particular project. And now I'm going to add a lot more graphite up here above it. Again, these are areas where this is ice around it. It's swimming between ice flows. And so I'm adding a lot of this dark area, I'm setting up some dark regions where there's shadow cast by the ice itself from the sun that's just kind of penetrating it a little bit from above in some parts. But it gets darker the farther away we are from this sort of breathing hole area. And so it's going to be darkest toward the edges. And it's kind of interesting how this can be applied. Now, I don't need to use a brush. There are other ways to apply this, even without water. The brush is interesting in that it is a less sort of a lower pressure kind of a tool, and so it doesn't rub it in too hard, and so I have more control over how much graphite gets entrained in the paper, and it's a much more gradual process of applying it. But I could actually smear this on with my finger or with like a Kleenex or whatever, and put more pressure on it than a brush can convey, and that would probably create darker areas faster. So it's a matter of balancing control with speed. And right now we've got a lot more control and we're sacrificing speed. But when you're working with a new medium, sometimes it's nice to not go too all out and just kind of give it a little bit of time until you get the feeling for how it works. But I'm going to test it here. So for example, I'll take my finger and kind of rub it in some areas here. You can see, look at the difference. Look at that. It becomes a lot more grainy. It's taking on the texture of the paper more obviously. This is another way I can apply it. Or I can just take like a Kleenex here and see what happens if I do that. And that might actually be a little bit of an in-between the brush and my finger. Less pressure, but maybe more than the brush. So you get all kinds of different ways you can do this. And actually this also tells me the way that the Kleenex is working, that it might be a very useful tool to apply if I wanted to make clouds in the sky using this medium. So lots of neat things. I mean, working with different media and artwork in art allows you to explore all kinds of different techniques, and it's really fun when you do that. You can experiment and learn a lot. Yeah.
I was just trying to go through the various media that we've already used in the past on this program. We did have charcoal already, right?
We did. Did we charcoal? Okay, all right. So I don't know. I don't remember the charcoal, but I could be wrong.
We have to watch episodes 1, 2, and 3 again.
Yeah. I know we had color pencils.
You had color pencils. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I don't think we had paint per se, did we? I don't remember there being paint.
No, I don't think
we just did these dry media. Maybe pastels. We might have used pastels.
Yeah, I think so. I think we did. Possibly. Yeah.
I think that's as far as we went that way. So this is maybe the most paint-like that we've explored so far. This is not exactly paint yet. I haven't applied water yet. That's going to change things, but I'm going to give it a try real soon here because I'm kind of eager to figure out what its effect will be. But I also want to just kind of add some of this background here first so that we can set the stage with some of the tone. And now that I'm rubbing it with my finger, my nice little gray fingertip, it's taken on the texture of the paper much more.
Oh yeah, you can see I switched to another camera. Right. You can see the texture here, like really nice.
Doing a good job of recording it. Yeah. But I'm just kind of painting around the whale initially because I want to set up this overall tone behind it.
Yeah. So if you're wondering what that leftover area is, sort of in the center, that is the actual narwhal.
There's the narwhal.
If you've just tuned in,
that's why we're here.
That's why we're here. We're doing narwhals today.
Yeah, we'll get to it eventually. Yeah. Well, it's, you know what, though, the thing is, when you are creating artwork, it's important to think about the context, the environment. We're talking about environment here in many different contexts, but the environment of the subject in the painting is also very important to consider. And because, you know, it sets up things like the lighting, the way in which light hits the subject, you know, where the light can come from. And that's all very important to, you know, rendering something in an interesting way. And so your context is super important. Okay, so we're getting there now. So what I'm going to do is, you know, I'm just going to a little bit more on this side here, and then I'm actually going to jump into doing the narwhal itself, because, you know, that's kind of why we're here, we just mentioned. And then, you know, play around with the water as well to see what we can do. So, yeah, this is neat. We can try out different kinds of medium and have unusual effects. And learn about these animals and their environments in the process. They're such an unusual, interesting whale that way, with this crazy tusk and just this. And the other thing you'll notice about them is, I mean, from the little bit that's visible here, and from the, you know, the image in the book that we showed just before, they're very stout-looking animals. Their body is very rounded. There aren't a lot of narrow bits. I mean, the tusk is long and narrow, but it's not like a soft body part. And it's important because animals that live in cold environments, they run the risk of losing heat easily to their environment. And they're warm-blooded, but you don't want to waste energy if you're just going to be losing a lot of that heat, right? Because you want to conserve energy so you don't have to eat as much. It makes it easier to survive and reproduce. And so the optimum is to have a body that conserves heat as well as it can, so it doesn't have to pump out too much heat energy by chemical means. And it just so happens that the shape of an object is very important in determining the rate at which heat escapes from it or is exchanged between it and its environment. And the more rounded an object is, the lower the ratio between the surface area and its volume, the more effectively it can, the less rapidly it loses heat or exchanges heat with the environment, basically. So low surface to volume ratios, and that's exactly what we see with the narwhal. It's very rounded. It's you know, it's not quite a sphere, but you know, and in terms of a torpedo-shaped animal, it's as close as you can get to a sphere in some ways. So it has this shape that allows it to conserve body heat very effectively. Kind of a neat bit of ecology there, and the way in which ecology interacts with physics.
I should mention we have a secret third team member who is sitting in a room next door, is watching this program, is telling us how silly we are and when we need to wrap it up, and that's Christine, and she's asking us whether we want to continue a little bit longer, because technically we'd have a break in a minute. Do we want to run a little bit longer because we had a slightly chaotic?
I think so. Yeah, we had kind of started a bit later, or like we started slowly. So why don't we? I mean, what do you want to give it another extra? How much?
Give it another 10 minutes or so.
Sounds good.
Okay, so 10 minutes, Christine, it is.
And then, I mean, it's not the end of the program. Then it's the break, and then we'll be back afterwards for more detail. But that's going to be our first sort of waypoint, or our pit stop time, basically.
That's right. We need nourishment too.
Yes. So yeah. Strange, weird toothed whale. So interestingly, now, I don't know if some of you out there are familiar with the evolution of whales, but there are some really interesting whales that have shown up in Earth's deep past, and that are pertinent when we're talking about the narwhal. So there is a very strange whale, and some of you may be familiar with it. It's called Odobenocetops. And
never heard of it.
Yeah, right?
Is it in your book? You have a
no,
prehistoric section in there as well.
Yeah, but I don't think it's in there. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if the whales. We didn't have much of a prehistoric section this way, but not much. And I don't think it's. You know what? I don't know. Let's see. Anyway, that whale, it is It's got sort of a common nickname. It's called a walrus. I mean, it's like, you know, the Narluga and now the walrus.
Of course.
The reason why it's called that is because it also has a tusk. But this tusk, unlike the narwhals, isn't pointing forward. It's swept backward. So and its face, and because of this tusk kind of coming downward from its jaw, makes it look like a walrus.
Of course.
And so it's the walrus. And the walrus are not whales, right? Walrus are actually related to seals. So it's kind of an interesting example of convergent evolution, where an animal or, you know, life. Oh yeah, it is here. Well, look at that. Okay. We're here. I'll show you. This is the walrus.
Let's go to camera 3.
There we go. That's it. So this is what I'm talking about.
Oh my God, that looks so
Isn't that weird? It's Odobenocetops, Leptodon, and its head, and so it's got this weird little kind of like a flu, like a dog almost. And from one side of it, it's just one side, it's got this long tusk as well that sticks backward.
That looks so inconvenient.
Isn't it weird? So
that looks so inconvenient. That actually, in your illustration, it's touching the pectoral flipper there, and I'd be like,
it's weird. But I think from what I recall, that it was used to maybe dislodge things like shellfish from the benthos, the bottom of the ocean, for example. So narwhal are not the only strange tusked whales in existence, or at least in the past. Walrus.
The walrus.
So, you know, you learn all sorts of weird things about animals on our program here.
I love that I actually managed to get your book out, so we can show people some of these things, because you can literally find this nowhere else. I don't think I've seen anything of this, anything like that online, at least. Like, you're not going to randomly stumble over that when you're browsing the web.
No, yeah, you might.
You might.
No, it's actually
maybe if you're
well-known
Googling
animal.
for walrus.
Yeah, but usually, yeah. I mean, it's not something that everybody's familiar with, though. It's true. It's kind of a weird one, but we do actually find that here and there. And of course, you know, in paleontology circles, it's very well known. But it's a funky animal. There's some really interesting.
I'm totally not promoting the book, which you can buy on Amazon and wherever books are available. Julius Chittoni, just Google it. It's called Discovering Whales, Dolphins, and Porpoises.
That's right. I did a series of these books, the Discovering series. Of books.
Yeah, they all have these. I imagine it's sort of an experience. If you're into ASMR, like maybe we should hint this out to ASMR artists and find somebody who wants to work with us to raise awareness for these species, because it's very touchable. It has sort of a real texture on the outline. And
they did a good job of designing the texture of the cover. Actually, the whole series is like this. It's kind of soft and pliable, and it has this texture, and not just texture, but they have different lusters and like surface textures for different components. Like the eyes of the animal are shiny, and then you've got like I've got one on sharks, and it has sort of a sandpapery feel for their skins. It's kind of neat that way. Creative.
I'm always amazed by how much artistic output is contained in just one of these books, because this entire thing is illustrated by you. These are all your illustrations. So
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Julius' secret is, of course, that he doesn't actually sleep ever. He doesn't sleep. That's how he manages to finish these books with dozens.
Oh my God, it's been an interesting process, but I've just recently finished another one of them, basically, and so I'm kind of celebrating that now. So there's new ones coming out all the time, but so I'm kind of in the midst of shifting gears a lot in my career. I'm sort of opening a new chapter, so to speak, and there's going to be some fun things coming up, I think. But anyway, so here we go. Okay, this looks so terribly amateur right now, but you know what? The key thing to remember, and you know, this is coming from an established artist. When you're doing artwork, there are these stages in the process that you feel like, what is this? I'm not satisfied with it. It looks awful to me. Well, that's normal. That's fine. All of us experience that. The artwork won't look necessarily satisfying until you pass a stage where you've gotten enough detail and so on. The key thing is, go easy on yourself. You know, don't kick yourself too hard. It's fine. It doesn't always look as good as you think it will initially, and you need to give it time and don't give up on it. Keep going at it, and then it'll develop as it goes.
Right, unless you're me and basically talentless.
Oh no! You can all, you know, that's the thing. It's like it's easy to get discouraged when you feel you don't have talent or skill, but that's all the stuff that can be learned, right?
I wanted to mention if somebody out there at home in the digital world out there, and I swear I'm an IT professional, I really know what I'm talking about. But all these people out there watching, if you're wondering whether we're interested in seeing your artwork, if you're doing the same thing, if you're drawing along, painting along, just sketching something, we'd like to see it.
Ooh, yes.
You can email info@porpoise.org. That's info@porpoise.org. And maybe we'll show it on air, or maybe not. If you don't want it to be shown on air, let us know. We're just gonna have a look at it.
Well, it's nice to share with the community, right? And you get to see how other people are doing it. I mean, look at mine. This is like an absolute masterpiece it's a mess. I may as well have just kind of put some mud on it, but that's okay. You know what? This is the first stage or a stage in its production. We'll get kind of more detail as we go along now. Okay, I'm really curious to try some of this water now. Okay, so here we're gonna go give it a little bit of water on the narwhal. This is all experimental.
Me too. And depending on how much of a mess you're making, that'll decide whether we're going to do this again or not.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm dipping the brush in here in the graphite, and then I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. I'm going to put a little bit on the narwhal's melon first, right? To see what happens here. Oh, look at that. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I'm liking the effect. You know what? This actually does remind me of watercolors. It's much starker. And, because this is watercolor paper, it's perfect for this. I can actually work it a little bit.
I wish I could mirror this camera so we could turn it around, but I haven't figured that out yet. The last time I pressed the button, it zoomed in on your left eye. So
The camera is fixated on me.
I'm very careful with pressing buttons here. There's a lot.
But it's okay. It'll develop and we'll get better views of it as it goes. But this is an interesting feel. It does remind me a lot of watercolor, but also not fully. It's interesting.
It behaves so differently, though, right?
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And I'll bet you anything that when you add water, it fixes the pigment to this paper even better than dry. Usually often happens that way. Now, I'm not using any sort of fixative or carrying medium like gum arabic. You don't need to, I think, with this, but there are some pigments that are available that you can mix with something like gum arabic, and that's basically an adhesive medium that carries the pigment and then binds it to the surface of the paper. I'm not using any of that here, but this is cool because what you see here also is this weird dry brushing sort of effect. Dry brushing effect. I'm garbling my words. Sort of in between the smooth carriage of the pigment with a lot more water and halfway toward completely dry where it basically just kind of has this rough kind of look to it. So you get a really interesting set of effects happening. And now because I've already put some of this pigment, I keep saying pigment, it's kind of pigment, but the graphite powder on it, I can actually just apply water to some of this and it basically just redistributes the existing graphite powder, and it's kind of like using dilute watercolor paints. This is really cool. I like this effect. I like this way better than using the dry powder alone. This is very interesting feeling.
I just find that fascinating watching you. I could watch you all day. Sometimes I do. I've watched these old episodes just to get a feel of what the show was about. And
it's fun, yeah.
Christine reminds me that we've got 27 seconds.
But you know what? This is good because before the break, we were able to introduce the sort of the gist of this whole water addition thing, and now after this, we're going to be able to put a lot of detail into it. This is where it gets fun after this. So stay tuned. We'll be back after the break.
Yeah, don't go anywhere. We'll be back. And
you have to say that with the proper inflection, I think, though.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be right back. We'll get it done.
We're
So
about
don't go anywhere. We're just off to a break. It's just 10 minutes. We'll be back. Promised. Okay, I think those were all the microphones that I needed to unmute, and I can hear myself. That's great. That means you can hear me too. Welcome back to Canvas and Currents, the second part of it. We've just returned from our break. We've recharged Julius. Every now and then you need to plug him in again.
Yeah, I've got a port in the back of my head.
Yeah,
You can't see
USB-C.
that, but
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
It's decent. I need an upgrade, but you know.
Oh yeah, and if you're wondering, this is what it looks like in our little studio.
You think we have one copy of Marcus, but actually we have an infinite number of Marcuses.
Infinite, yeah. That's
they
such a
regress
cool
into that.
effect. Such a cool effect.
We don't have fun or anything.
We're doing definitely not fun, and definitely not still figuring out how our technology works here. That is very rude of you to think. In fact, we are so organized. Julius has already painted a narwhal over the last hour or so.
I'm calling this finished. It's a very expressive piece. No, maybe not.
We're out of time. Sorry, this is it. This is as much narwhal as we're gonna get.
Yeah, too bad, right? Exactly. You'll have to finish it, the rest of it, all of you.
I figured out the other camera perspectives. This one is a good one to show the artwork from
the
up
whole
top.
thing. Yeah, exactly.
It shows a little bit of the mess, which is part of the creative
even
process.
Have the nice little bowl of water here for a little bit of an organic component there.
Yeah,
All that. So absolutely. So yes, we got as far as adding some of the graphite using water to carry it. And now we're gonna just keep adding details like that here. Oh, by the way, I'm enjoying seeing the little pixel art narwhal that we have in the background here with this wonderful little rainbow tusk.
yeah.
And so we have all kinds of narwhal related stuff. And Marcus and Christina always do a great job of adding these little graphics here that are relevant to whatever subject we're dealing with at the time. And you can't see it here, but there's this wonderful, I think is it an LED?
The porpoise behind me.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. You see it there, exactly behind you. Yeah.
It's the porpoise above me. It's, if you look at the fluke, the strips have come off over the last hour or so. I need to fix my porpoise in the background, but yeah.
Good job, though. Very nice. Very nice. It's got this beautiful sort of cerulean blue.
And if I manage to press search, come on, it's gonna show me the narwhal, and it's the one without clouds, and this one was made by.
Oh yes.
Come on, can I find out? Tasha Doll. Tasha Doll created this in the Devoom community.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's kind of fun to add little bits of character like this, for example. Makes things more fun. So yes, you see what I'm doing here now is adding detail on the flukes. Narwhal have weird looking flukes. I say flukes. Flukes are the sort of like the equivalent of the tail fin of fish, right? But they're horizontally arranged, not vertically like fish. And so they move up and down rather than side to side. And narwhal have these interesting flukes. And you see a similar sort of a thing happen sometimes in orca, for example, that the ends of them are kind of twisted or bent in a different way. And sometimes for narwhal, actually, you can see them kind of bent up.
I like the effect that we're getting from your hands from the slightly distorted camera.
That's right. And they also have a very interestingly shaped flukes. If you look at them from above, there's a little bit difference in the shape of the flukes between males and females. But overall, though, more than with most other whales, they have this interesting shape where the trailing end of the flukes is actually convex backward. So very strange shaped flukes. Interesting animals that way. It's really easy to recognize a narwhal's flukes that way. Their shape. And you don't see them well in my drawing because we're mostly seeing them sort of edge on because it's swimming toward us and the flukes are kind of farther away. But just interesting to know that about them.
You mentioned they call them like corpse whale or something.
Yeah,
that's this interesting coloration. Do you know? Did you read anything about the? I'm just seeing that we still have our break banner on. Oh. This is past the break. I promise. Do you know what kind of adaptation this is? Where they're trying to blend in? Is the ice so dirty these days that works?
It's a good question. I'm not sure actually. You know what? I wonder if one of our viewers actually knows this, but because I could see that being kind of a. So their predators come in a couple of different kinds. The two main predators are polar bears and orca. And those are very different in terms of the environment in which they hunt, right? Polar bears hunt from above. Orcas hunt from within the water. And so I'm not sure actually what their color patterns are best evolved to, say, maybe protect them against. But if you think about it, perhaps, like when they come to breathing holes, polar bears sometimes wait there and scoop them up when they come up to breathe. So maybe these colors actually make them somewhat camouflaged against the just whatever colors are under the surface of the water. I don't know. Or maybe they protect them against orcas because they look like dirty algae-colored ice. Because sometimes one of the strategies that narwhal use to hide from orcas is they will just sit right underneath some ice floes and just sit there for a while. So it may be that they actually look like, dead stuff or not a living whale or just algae covered ice.
Right.
I don't know.
So when you're looking from top, that's
or even from the side.
Right.
Depends on, because orcas are going from the above, like polar bears for sure, but for orcas they're going to be looking from the side or from below even, I guess, depending on where they're swimming, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's an interesting question.
I'm surprised to hear about polar bears. I did actually not know that at all. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's one of the, and actually it's kind of cool when you think about it. Polar bears are kind of marine mammals in many ways too. They will swim long distances in the Arctic Ocean.
I've just read something. They're born light blue-gray, but become nearly black as juveniles, and then develop that mottled gray pattern as adults.
Interesting.
And turn whiter towards old age.
Yes, that's right. I remember that. They have these white patches that continue to enlarge, and you're right. As they age, they get later and later in color. So interesting that way.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another cool thing about them. As speaking of aging, they are one of the few mammals that have evolved to go through menopause.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a cool reason for this probably. They do sort of communal raising of their young. It's sometimes too hard for an individual female to raise her offspring, and so the older sort of individuals that are non-reproducing will contribute to parenting behavior.
So very similar to killer whales, where they pass on knowledge about feeding grounds and those kinds of things. So,
and actually, our own species too. We rely on our elders for a lot of wisdom, or even helping with social responsibilities and so on. And so you can see this kind of an interesting pattern take place in several species. And so, yeah, with narwhal, they're also one of these. So it's kind of neat to learn these things about them. And it's interesting to me when you see the biology reflect the kind of life history that they have in there.
Talking about that, we were talking about the ice earlier, and I just read that other whales that frequent the Arctic and migrate to warmer waters, narwhals remain in areas with 95 to 100% ice coverage.
Oh, wow.
Only using tiny breathing holes that may be over a mile apart.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, when you were saying too that they can hold their breath for like 25 minutes as they dive to incredibly great depths. So yeah, I mean, if you can hold your breath that long, you can travel between water or breathing holes that are a mile apart pretty easily, probably. But I guess the problem is you have to know it's there, right? So it's not a matter of just the distance to travel, but yeah, you got to look for it. So the searching can take some time, and you're never necessarily sure there's gonna be another one in that time. So I guess it's kind of a matter of sort of hedging their bets to look for these air holes and hope that there's something coming along, right?
And then navigate to the surface without getting, without ramming something with your tooth.
Yes, and not getting eaten by a polar bear, right? That's
on
waiting
top of
there.
that. Oh my God, yes.
So all these things is a complicated life for narwhal.
Yeah,
It's not that easy.
They are. I mean, I'm pretty sure our audience knows this, but these are mammals, so they do breathe air just like us, and they must return to the surface to breathe air. They don't have gills. They're not fish.
And you do have instances where if they don't move it out of an area fast enough, as the ice flows move in the winter, they actually do get trapped, and sometimes they do actually suffocate. That is one of the reasons for death for some individuals. It's a very real
another risk when you're a narwhal.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm experimenting with different textures and stuff using the water. This is looking pretty rough, but you can try out different kind of things. This is really kind of experimentation here. It's not like I'm producing a masterpiece here. I'm just kind of learning as I go, and different ways that you can apply your brush to generate textures. So sometimes if you, let's say, have a stiffer brush and you use the end of it, you can generate these very, very mottly type of patterns. There's a word I've just kind of coined, I think, mottly.
Mottly. That's totally different from mottled. It's,
yes, absolutely, very
totally
different.
Different word.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, nothing related to it.
It's a very sciencey term. Only scientists can decode.
We're very serious about what we talk about here.
And for those who are just tuning in, so Julius started just applying the graphite powder with that brush without using any water at all. So that was all dry, and now.
I'm messing it all up.
now he's ruining everything he's done.
I know, that's it. It's the story of my life with artwork. I start out well, and it's like, oh, well, I should have just left it that way. That's okay. You know what? You learn new things. And then the thing is, I can apply more graphite to this as well, and that'll change the effect yet again. And so, it's kind of nice. It is like watercolor, but also not. You have to work it quickly. This is what I'm learning. Is that you have to keep it wet and work it fast like watercolor, because once it dries, it's not as mobile anymore. So you have to be quick about it.
So you can't smear it very much anymore
right.
once it's
it's definitely not like oils. So up in this corner, you can see I kind of was still working on ways of trying to do it with less water, but I'm thinking that actually it was better. Like what I'm doing now is I'm applying more water, and it's keeping it wet long enough for that graphite powder to spread around more evenly, and I'm liking the effect of it more. So yeah, this is very much a learning process that we're doing here, figuring out how to use graphite powder in ways I've never done before, and learning as I go. And hopefully you can all maybe try this out at some point. It's a neat medium to use. I've never tried it before, and it's very unusual, and you kind of learn as you go, and you figure out what works better and what doesn't. So make sure that you give yourself a lot of leeway to experiment. It was fun. There we go. So the further away ice down below is smoother looking. Maybe it's blurred. Maybe it's just hidden in the distance. I don't know. But here we go. We've got a little bit of shade basically in the background. There we go.
And if you're watching this at home and you're wondering, like, can I do a narwhal? Like, can I do this? Like, you absolutely can. Unless you're me, then this LED purpose behind me is pretty much as far as I ever got. Can I show people this again?
Yeah,
that is my only attempt at art, and it looks like the illustration that a 4-year-old would create, and I'm sort of stuck there.
Yeah, but I mean, you're all basically what you're having to do there is bend an LED light strip creatively. So it actually takes a lot of skill to make it do what you want. It's not like drawing with, graphite.
Thanks for saying that, Julius. It makes me feel so much better. It does look like a 4-year-old's illustration, though. I'm realistic enough to recognize that. But yeah, there's you got to be really careful. You don't want to mess up the tusk.
No, working with the edge of the tusk here,
gotta
right?
Be pristine white.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Undoing the black is going to be really.
Well, actually, we'll see, because this is graphite, so you can actually erase it a little bit.
Erase it.
But I've also come prepared with white colored pencils as well. So if I wanted to add some highlights, I can also do that.
And Julius has actually created 10 of these paintings, so we can just swap it out in a quick camera swap, and you won't notice a thing.
There you go. Exactly. Yes, totally. No. Okay, there we go. So, you know what? I'm going to stop messing around with the background here. I'm going to add some detail to the narwhal now, because that worked out well last time.
And we did talk about the pretty stocky appearance of the narwhal, and I was curious. I was reading up on the blubber in particular, because it is pretty cold in the Arctic, thankfully, because
near freezing, right? It's like right at the edge of freezing. So, yeah.
And we've established they need the ice to survive. It's the substrate, basically, the soil for the terrestrial world. That's what it is for the food web in the Arctic. Without that ice, we would probably see their food sources disappear.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all connected.
All connected, and I've just read that their blubber can make up to 40% of their total body weight.
Pretty amazing, right?
So, and it's used for energy storage and for insulation. So they
that makes sense. Yeah,
they carry energy storage with them. So that's what I keep telling people. It's just energy storage, people.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's what I'm working on when I eat those cakes. Mm-hmm. You never know when you're going to need a burst of energy.
I've learned when I started talking about porpoises that they have like different types of blubber. One being that metabolic blubber that they can use for energy storage, or whether to like metabolize it, hence metabolic blubber. If they go into starvation, that's a way for them to I guess regain some of that lost energy. And there is also structural blubber that gives them that hydrodynamic shape that we talked about, because they do look kind of stocky. Can we see that? Oh yeah, it's becoming more visible, I think.
Yeah. Like torpedo shaped.
Sort
of, yeah. Sort of.
They're in the same group as beluga whales, and there's only 2 species in that group, but they kind of do look. Yeah, it's they are more torpedo shaped. They're less chubby than beluga whales. I wonder why that is, because they do share their habitat overlaps a little bit, right? But beluga whales look like they're equipped to deal with colder.
Yeah, interesting, because narwhal, I think, actually live in colder environments than belugas, don't they?
I believe so. Yeah,
they're more northern.
Yeah.
They're actually some of the populations, they travel almost right up to the North Pole. It's very close to it, not far away at all. So yeah, it's interesting actually. But that's the thing with ecology and ecophysiology. There's many different factors at work, and so sometimes we can't just know that it's just one particular use the word again, factor. Generating a particular pattern that we're seeing. Sometimes it's more than one, and it's a balance of different kinds of things that they've evolved to work best under. So, Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good question. Who knows? Somebody may actually. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to be starting like roughly. I'll add a few splotchy blotches all over the place here to start to give it a bit of volume and texture, color texture, tone textures on it, and so on. And that's actually where it would be lightest. So I shouldn't add too much dark there because under their chin, they're kind of pretty bright white. But up on top of their head, they have often have quite a lot of dark. Oh, here's some really good dark tones I'm adding. But that's appropriate. This area on top of the head here is actually quite a dark part of the whale. So now we're adding a lot of detail. Right? This is where it gets a lot of its character now. Okay? So we were kind of going easy before. Now I'm starting to go pretty heavy with the tones because I'm not messing around anymore. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
You would never.
No. Actually, it's neat too. Their name, the scientific name, is Monodon monoceros, and that literally means one tooth, one horn. Get very creative.
One tooth, one horn.
Or single tooth, single horn. Yeah.
Sounds very corporate.
Yeah.
One tooth, one horn.
Yeah, so it's appropriately named. It's quite descriptive. And that's what you often find with a lot of Latin names and scientific names, that they are chosen usually with some care to be quite descriptive. This is our chance as scientists to describe what we're studying, and so.
That reminds me, another thing I forgot from my introduction, because we had a few very small technical issues at the beginning, but I didn't get to mention that Julius is a biologist. He has a PhD in microbiology, and that is your field. So I don't know how you got to join the largest,
yes,
both the largest species and the small, dealing with the smallest of them as well.
I'm just never satisfied with one thing. I have to have the whole range, right? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I started out in ecology and then edged toward microbiology, and then of course part of the way through there during my PhD, that's when I started my illustration career, and it just kind of ballooned out from there.
It turned out to be more fun. Not that you've given up science.
Oh no, but that's kind of the neat thing, is because I'm able to work with scientists to create press release images, museum exhibit, murals, and so on. I'm still working with scientists closely, and I enjoy that a great deal. And so it's just kind of like my purpose, my function is to do the rendering of the imagery. And that's just a wonderful sort of a blend of the science and the art. I enjoy it a great deal. And so,
and in a way, you're making that science sort of accessible, because what are you gonna, like, humans, we are visual, right? We're not. Yep. I can read that whole paper and it'll describe in all detail what that animal would have looked like, but in my mind, that's really not going to do all that much. So having a visual to go with it. I mentioned it earlier. Julius is a paleo artist, so he is bringing species back to life that we haven't had on this planet for a very long time, and
figuratively, but not literally. Don't worry. Yeah, I'm not responsible for a T-Rex showing up in your neighborhood.
He's doing that in his secret lab at home.
Yes, but yeah, it is fun actually to be able to do this for museums, for press releases. The news. When it features some interesting new study, a lot of scientists are realizing that commissioning an artist to, create a reconstruction that represents the findings of the study is very helpful, because it's not just. I mean, it makes the research much more visible, both to members of the scientific community who also see it, but also to the general public. And of course, visibility will ultimately translate often into increased funding for more study of this. And so it actually has some very real positive benefits or consequences.
I have an interesting question on YouTube coming from Sabrina. She is asking, I'm curious what the artist feels as he paints a narwhal.
Well, sometimes it's frustration. the paint isn't doing what I want. But I also have to temper that with patience because I know that it changes as it goes. Yeah, it's a good question. What do you feel when you're painting? One of the reasons I switched my sort of the trajectory of my career from my initial plan was to sort of continue academically and to eventually become a professor. But the main reason that I ended up changing that direction and becoming a professional illustrator and natural history artist is because of the feeling that it gives me. So science is wonderful, doing the research and then making these wonderful discoveries. And I've been lucky. I've had some wonderfully fun discoveries in the science. That's wonderful. And then publishing it is just rewarding, super rewarding. But there are also these long periods of time in between of tedious work, as you'd expect. Of course, you need to do a lot of work to come up with some of these amazing publications that result from it. But there was a difference when I had a taste of doing the artwork, interpreting scientific results, and generating this imagery. I found that I was always enjoying it, having this great deep feeling of reward while I was creating it. Just putting the strokes of paint on it was always just very rewarding. And to me, that kind of was the clincher and what made me choose to go down this path, because I'm still able to interact with the scientists and take part in at least spreading the information about the research, but I'm doing it in a way that gives me a great reward all the time. And so it's a feeling, I don't know how you even describe it, a kind of an elation, satisfying feeling of seeing the lines that you put down start to coalesce into a meaningful image. I just really love doing that. I love playing around with light and shadow, and the more you do it, the more rewarding it gets, because you start to become a little bit of an expert at how light behaves, and you get to practice generating all kinds of things.
Oh, I remember we had several episodes that we dedicated to light, talking about the effects of light and refraction.
Yes.
I learned so much. I also enjoy working with scientists. I surround myself with scientists all the time, and I do that specifically because I hope that eventually it's just going to rub off on me, and I'm going to get a little bit smarter just by hanging out with these people. And so far with mixed results, but I'll keep trying.
But it is fun. Yeah, you learn so much. That's one of the things that I found too during my career of creating these artworks. Either working with individual scientists or teams of scientists to create imagery for museums, for example. I got to interact with all kinds of interesting people, and I've learned so much. And it's always that's one of the really fun parts of it is who you interact with and what you learn along the way. And scientists are very often very passionate about what they do. So, you get to interact with some very excited and interesting personalities. And so it's a lot of fun. And so one of the things I very much look forward to is attending conferences where scientists come together to present their work mostly to each other and communicate about the work. And then it's a very fun place to be. It's lots of learning, but also you get to interact with the personalities, and there's just lots of fun that way.
That's one way of putting it. You have to imagine scientists don't get out much if they're stuck in their labs for most of the time, writing for months on their paper.
Nobody parties like scientists, I tell you though. Every year I try to attend the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology annual meeting, and because that's where a lot of my clients are and the people that I tend to also share a lot of my work with, and it's very animated. It's a lot of fun. So that's always, it's a great experience to do that.
There's so many things that I've written down and copy and pasted from all over the internet earlier today. One of the things we mentioned earlier, we mentioned at the very beginning when we started talking about the species, we were talking about the conservation status, and I looked that up. I think we were pretty much spot on. According to Wikipedia, at least, there's about 170,000 individuals
Under 70,000.
remaining, and 75% of them live in the Canadian Arctic.
So that's interesting. So here we have a responsibility. Our waters hold the lion's share of narwhal. So what we do in our waters, how we treat this environment will have a large impact on the health of narwhal populations around the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, there are in Canada, their status is now special concern.
Right,
It used to be not at risk, and that only happened last year. So only in May 2024 they were upgraded, so to say. Similar to it's the same conservation status as the harbor porpoise here in Canada is also a species of special concern. What does that mean, really? I guess it puts into place some additional monitoring. Is that enough?
And that's important.
I don't know. As in many cases, when these species have a global conservation status that puts them at not at risk or least concern, or these kinds of classifications, that doesn't necessarily mean that applies to the species as a whole. There's a lot of individual populations, and they might actually be doing pretty poorly.
That's very true. Actually, you see that with a lot of there's some shark species. Many shark species are in great danger. Very much threatened by our activities, but some of them do pretty okay globally. But there are some populations, like in the Mediterranean, for example, and for some species that are just absolutely critically endangered. So you really have to look at that, and not just because you want to protect them everywhere. The sum total of the genetic diversity of a species is the sum of all of the different populations, and we need to maintain as high genetic diversity among within a species as possible, because it's genetic diversity that allows them to be more resilient in the face of various kinds of stresses. And so if we have very low genetic diversity, it's much greater chance of species succumbing to some individual threat. But if you have a lot of different kinds of genetic lineages, that at least gives the species as a whole a better chance of surviving any given kind of a pressure. So it's super important for us to maintain as broad a diversity of populations genetically as we can. We can't just say, we're going to set aside this particular area and that's representative of the whole species. Well, it's not. Genetically, it's often not representative. It might be a very, very specialized, narrow genetic, a small. Oh goodness, I need coffee. I'm running out of my vocabulary. A small amount of genetics. Anyway, it's we
genetic stuff. Yeah.
The genetic stuff. That's yes, exactly.
That would be
the genetic stuff.
That's
is not
my level of vocabulary.
Yes, I talk good. Yes. That's it. Diversity is crucial. So yes, genetic diversity within a species is very important to maintain as much as possible. Interestingly enough, some species do demonstrate great resilience even in the absence of huge genetic diversity. Vaquita are a really good example of that.
Oh, yeah.
We currently are looking at what we hope is a bottleneck in their population over time. What I'm saying by hoping, I'm saying that I hope that this is the smallest that they reach and that they will increase. But they don't show the same kinds of problems with, say, inbreeding depression that you might expect from other species that have very low population sizes. For some reason, they seem to be very resilient to small population sizes, and that is I'm very grateful for that, because that's pretty much the only reason they have a chance of rebounding, assuming we can reduce the pressure.
That's right, and also the reason why we're telling people that it is a very small population, like 8, 9, 10 individuals maybe, definitely fewer than 20, and we keep telling people that it's not their biggest problem, genetic diversity for them, just because they've been historically a small population, and apparently when that's the case, and they've been a very small population for a very long time, then that they develop that kind of resilience. I recall we we did a podcast on Not a Dolphin is our podcast series for the Porpoise Conservation Society. We interviewed, or Lauren, our host, interviewed Dr. Barbara Tyler, and she is a geneticist, and she talked at length about the whole thing. And me dumbing this down into language I can understand, I think essentially they've lost or they've managed to purge that kill gene, which is normally essentially, if you have a very small gene pool, that's essentially going to lead to the death of those individuals, and that they've managed to purge that from their gene pool just because they've been this small for a very long time as a species. Does that make any sense, Julius?
It does. Basically, one of the problems that you see with very small population sizes is that you have these genes that are deleterious often. Some of the genes that lead to certain kinds of disease that result from accumulation of certain deleterious recessive traits. And if you can purge some of these genes that lead to certain kinds of genetic-based diseases, then even at low population sizes, you don't run the risk of developing some of these conditions as much. And I guess it sounds like Vaquita have somehow managed to purge some of these genes that are otherwise harmful if they accumulate in population or in low populations, because sometimes they're recessive genes, and they may not be very visible except when you have them in duplicate. I may be just completely making stuff up here, but anyways, yeah, they're harmful genes that, as you said, they seem to have.
When you make things up, it still sounds, it still makes much more sense than if I do, and we hallucinate a lot less than ChatGPT. So
Yes,
there's always that.
Oh my goodness! Don't get me started on that.
Julius is a huge AI fan. Huge.
You know what? Machines have it out for me. If there's ever a machine uprising, I'm going to be the first target, because I've been so vocally against artificial or AI generated imagery. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm vociferous in my expression against AI. Well, I mean, it's for many reasons. I mean, it's not only a big threat to the art community, basically, attempting to replace artists, but
it's also like the practical effect is that it's not doing a very good job.
No, it's not. No.
If you try and have it, ask it. Ask ChatGPT to give you a photorealistic rendition of a harbor porpoise. It's gonna look like a terrible dolphin-like creature that is neither dolphin nor porpoise. Definitely not a harbor porpoise.
There's actually a horrible one out there of narwhal as well, with this ridiculously stupid looking tusk stuck in. It's like it's been stuck into the face and like rammed in, like it's been stabbed in the face with it. It looks ridiculous. So yeah,
maybe that's what they really look like. Like we haven't. It's still on our bucket list. We want to. I was saying that to Christina earlier today. We gotta travel. We got them in Canada. So how hard can it be? Like, do I need an icebreaker? How do I get there? We're still figuring out our travel plans, but
go in the summer when they travel to shallower, ice-free areas.
I've just read, talking about this, I love cooler weather. I'm not a huge summer fan. My favorite season is fall, but narwhals like it significantly colder. In fact, they are actively seeming to avoid temperatures. Research is saying that they seem to be avoiding temperatures above 2 degrees Celsius or 35.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
They like it cold. Yeah, they're kind of like me that way too. I'm with you on that, Marcus. Very much so. I like cooler temperatures. Maybe not 2 degrees, but cooler than 35.
10 would do, right? If we cooled the summer down to maybe 15 or so, I would find that much more pleasant.
15, maybe no more than about 22, maybe. But yeah, getting there. Yes.
There's so much. We only have about 12 minutes to go.
Well, we're getting there. We're
getting there. Your novel looks very novel-y. We're gonna at the end of the program, we're gonna hold his painting against the more photorealistic rendition in the book.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but I mean, I guess this is a thing. This has been a very quick thing. Oh, and this is brand new. I've never used this medium before, so it's kind of fun to play around with it. And then the more you do it, the better you can get potentially. So I can see there being some future for this. Another thing I want to try in one of these programs is Scratchboard. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it's basically a kaolinite clay, white clay that's pasted onto a wooden board, and then it's painted over with black India ink. And so what you do is you use a sharp instrument to remove the ink and expose the white clay. And so it's basically, you end up like, it's like drawing with a white colored something on a black surface. And the neat thing is that because you're limited in the sharpness by the pointiness of the instrument you use, so you can make really fine lines. So it's excellent for things like fur or stippling, pointillism, and there are some incredible artists out there with super skills. My favorite among the Scratchboard artists is John N. Agnew. He's a very well-known wildlife artist, a bit of a personal hero of mine, and he does absolutely astounding work on Scratchboard. You can find a lot of his work featuring reptiles like crocodilians and turtles and stuff, and wow, just it blows you away what he's capable of doing. So these are all nice, and they inspire me when I see this because I can see what's possible. So many different media.
Well, you've convinced me already, and I'm determined to bring you back to see that in action.
That would be fun. That's fun to do, yeah. Oh, there we go. So that's most of the narwhal detail already here. What I'm going to try actually is see if we can work with a couple of things here. I'm curious how the eraser works on any of this. Yeah, so it doesn't erase much. Now, the nice thing is that once you've got the water to deliver the powder, it kind of fixes it. So it's going to be pretty stable on this surface. But I did mention, I think, that I brought along, if I did, some white colored, this is a colored pencil, and I'll see if I can add a little bit of highlights here and there using this, and I don't know if it'll work, maybe not. That's okay. If it doesn't, that's fine too. You know, what I probably would need in this case is something more of a texture like either charcoal. There's actually this white color charcoal available, or like a pastel, a dry pastel, which actually is a lot more opaque and covers better. So I don't think I'll be able to put highlights on this, but that's okay because this has been just like painting or drawing with a pencil, basically, except I've been able to deliver this pigment using water. It's just the strangest kind of a feel. So it's a lot like watercolor, but actually, this also reminds me of using India ink, diluting it and just kind of painting it on. It's a very similar kind of a texture that it develops. And yet it's graphite, so you can actually smear it a bit too afterwards. Really interesting.
I'm worried about it being preserved to do it justice. Like I don't want to see you.
Oh no, it's actually holding quite well. It's not easy to smear it actually. It's a little bit, but not much. It's holding fast very surprisingly well for graphite. And I think part of it is because I chose watercolor paper and it's gotten into the surface sort of pores of the paper quite effectively. So it's not smooth paper, and that has helped a lot.
I want to pass on a few things from the chat. Fellow artist Casey Snow, you can just search for that name on both Twitch and I think on YouTube as well.
Did
probably
some great work last time.
Yeah, she very much. She says, I very much feel that art and science go hand in hand,
Yes.
and both fields tend to attract very curious and enthusiastic people. That is how I would describe Julius.
I'm a very curious person.
Very
I don't mean this necessarily as an interested. More like
Very
enigmatic or-
curious person.
He's curious.
He's a curious
He's a curious
person.
fellow.
He's a curious fellow.
But yes.
And then I got this question twice, actually. Casey asked that, and then we had a similar question from Sabrina somewhere. I swear I didn't make this up. No, yeah, she wrote, I'm really enjoying this feed. It's soothing watching Julius painting while learning about marine life. That's why we call him the Canadian Bob Ross, basically. the Bob.
Oh, we're going to make a little happy ice flow here.
Happy little ice float. And there was also the question whether you do art streams anywhere or only for special events. There's sort of all kind of special events.
Actually, here's a little shout out. Tomorrow, so yeah, I flew to the coast here for a couple of reasons. Tomorrow morning.
Mainly to see me. That was
let's
reason
see
number
Marcus, of
one.
course, of course, yes, absolutely. But as a side sort of project, I'm also doing what's called a walk and draw tomorrow. We're meeting. It's through Sierra Club BC, and we're actually meeting at Pacific Spirit Regional Park. And I'm going to take a bunch of people, and we're going to just kind of find some small forest life that is interesting and inspiring and draw it on site. Basically, it's going to be plein air drawing, and it's going to be combination just like this. Basically, this
Incredible.
speed of-
So
we'll talk about the biology and the conservation, and then show
it's
how to draw.
walking, talking, and drawing. And
Yeah,
there were
yeah.
several comments in the chat earlier that how difficult they find the very idea of you being able to draw and paint, and at the same time doing all this narration and talking.
You notice I'm not
Christine
doing
was saying the
bubblegum
same
though.
thing.
That's the thing. That would be the.
It's specifically bubblegum that doesn't work. He can't do that at the same time.
Yes, but it's fun. Yeah, exactly. So I guess we do various kinds of streaming here and there. I've worked with other organizations too. Sharks for Kids is another one. We've done a lot of these fun.
I would love to do a stream for them as well from the studio. Maybe we can organize something like that, because we have another book that you've given me with featuring sharks
my
as
other
well.
favorite.
It's another one from these Discovering series. Beautiful book, which you can also buy on Amazon if you look for Julius Chatonnet. He has illustrated so many books, and they're all commercially available right now. And if you order now, I'm just kidding. But
I will throw in a free shark.
an actual shark. You get the first 3 people to order now get an actual shark. And I think I have to add that I'm being funny here, just in case somebody intends to sue us over the real shark in the
Where's my
absence
shark?
the absence of sharks being used against us.
Oh, speaking of sharks, here's something that I wonder about, and I haven't come across it in my readings, but it makes me wonder. One of the animals that also shares an environment with narwhal is the Greenland shark. It's a very large shark, one of the largest sharks in the world. And it is known to eat seals, I think. I wonder what, if any, interaction there is in the wild between Greenland sharks and narwhal. Like, I mean, obviously narwhal eat smaller fish, but do Greenland sharks pose a threat as a predator of narwhal? I wonder. It'd be something I've never thought about before.
That is not something that I encountered. I'm kind of scared looking at the timer telling me technically we only have 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes left.
Wow.
Maybe we go a little bit over since we're
having so much fun.
Yeah, we're having so much fun. We're also hungry. I haven't eaten anything
that's right.
since breakfast, basically.
Yeah, you start to see us kind of tipping over or shriveling or whatever. Maybe that's kind of the sign.
That's why. That's why we have that. I mentioned we have a third person behind the scenes. Christina's watching this. She is running the timer that's telling us that we only have 4 minutes left, and she will rescue us in case we both collapse on the studio.
Yeah, we're grateful to her for many reasons.
That's just
she's done
awesome.
such wonderful work supporting these broadcasts. It's been awesome. We're also basically just about ready here. So I mean, I'm just adding details to the background ice here. So.
And to the question, like people were asking, are you doing art streams somewhere? I'm still trying to turn Julius into a YouTube and TikTok sensation.
Yeah.
We're working on this. We're geographically challenged right now. I'm still working out how to kidnap you without repercussions.
Lure me back to the coast here, right? Exactly, yeah. Oh, I tell you, landing here and seeing the forests again. Oh,
we have one of the most beautiful airports in the world here in Vancouver with some
Are you serious, or are you being...
No, really. They've won prizes for it.
Actually, it is a good airport. This is true. Yes. It has been highly rated. That's true, it is. I do like the Vancouver airport. It works. And that's saying a lot for some airports. It does work quite well.
I love how this novel has come together over the last pretty much 2 hours now. I have no idea what time it is. It's been just 10 minutes or so, closing in on 10 minutes after 2 hours. But we had 10 minutes break, so technically, it looks very much like the illustration in your book. And if you were to, the amazing thing about being able to do these looking at these illustrations is you see these animals in a way that you would definitely and absolutely never see them in the wild. There is no way, even if you hopped on an icebreaker and got your high definition drone flying, there is no way you would get images that show the animal underwater in that type of
hard to
detail.
Well, I mean, it's true, but I mean, you do have some amazing wildlife photographers sometimes. Actually, one of my favorites, Paul Nicklin, does absolutely spectacular underwater, well, also above water, but underwater wildlife photography. He's a Canadian photographer. I've had the pleasure of meeting him once as well, and I'm just, whenever I see his photography, I immediately recognize that it's his. It's interesting to say that for a photographer, that their work is such a sort of signature of them that you can recognize who it's from immediately. It's one thing for it to be, like artwork that you paint, for example. It's easier to get sort of a signature appearance. But for photography, that's really saying something, actually, to make it recognizable. Here we go. So yeah, but he's spectacular work. So there's the narwhal that's in the book. Okay, so it's a little different.
You can...
hang on. I know what I can do this too. There we go. There's the narwhal again from the book, and a little bit of glare. I'm moving it around the glare.
We can try...
There we go.
Wait, let's see. We can try it on this camera.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, maybe that way.
Which is that one over there.
Is it that way? Wow. Okay. Yeah, here we go. I'm trying to think in reverse and let me reposition this so that it's
you can put it flat on the table.
Oh, there you go. That works. Hey, that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
And that way we can compare.
The only downside of having so many cameras is that just finding the one that does the thing that you want is pretty hard.
Anyway, so it's a little off. And actually, my narwhal looks a little bit more like a melon-headed whale, so I'm a little bit off there. I think there should have been a little bit more tapering at the front end, basically. But oh well, we can't make it perfect. But there you go. So that's kind of our rendition of a narwhal, trying out a new artistic medium that I've never done before. So this was kind of fun. And I can think of different ways to apply this, using different means of pressing it onto the paper or whatever. And it's kind of an interesting medium, this powder graphite.
I loved watching this come to life. That is about 10 million times prettier than anything that I would ever put on a piece of paper. I'm very impressed, and I'm with the people that were saying online. They just love watching you paint and listening to that as well. The narwhal has a cute, shy smile. Mm-hmm. As a comment, go for it. But
not like the one that there's a really stupid AI image of it. It's got this ridiculous smile on it. You can recognize these things. So be critical, people. Watch out. Carefully, critically evaluate the images you get nowadays. You have to really watch out, and that's one of my big problems with AI AI imagery these days, is that it spreads misinformation like wildfire. It's really easy to just kind of, if you're not careful and looking at it, to believe, oh, this is what like a baby bird looks like, and no.
Yeah, if you're on your Facebook and Instagram feeds, like you can't trust what you're seeing, like whether it's people or animals, it paints a very wrong picture. I think you showed some kind of plant on your Facebook feed a while ago, which the AI version simply doesn't exist.
Yeah,
looked very pretty, like almost radiant.
Plants don't have 6 fingers,
Well, I'm afraid that's pretty much it from us for tonight. That was Canvas and Currents, episode number 4. There is hopefully going to be an episode number 5. I'm gonna grab you whenever you physically make it to Vancouver again in the near or far future. We're gonna try and make this happen again. I was just gonna give people this one. I'm gonna give people a last view of that beautiful narwhal. And can you just remind people, you've put that, what was the medium you were using?
Oh yeah, graphite powder. There's different kinds, but this is the graphite powder that I use. Basically, it comes in a bag like this, and then you can just kind of spread it on. And I actually put some of it out here onto this back of my pencil case as well. So there's like this. If you look at it, it's kind of that's the stuff right there. But I also mix it with a bit of water here, so I can use it to paint really dark. Just pick it up with a brush like that.
I love this. I love how it turned out.
Thank you. It's been fun. It's a new medium and kind of new things to explore with artwork.
All right, that leaves me to that one last bit. I want to thank Christine for being our production assistant behind the scenes. I want to thank the Marine Mammal Rescue community and their moderators there for helping us out on all these channels. I want to thank all of you for watching. This was Canvas and Currents. We'll be back if we can. The next time you can see Julius live from this studio will probably be for International Save the Vaquita Day, which is coming up in October. The date is on vaquita.day. Check it out. I don't remember, but that's the next time you're going to see Julius probably paint another vaquita. One of your most prolific piece of art pieces of art that I've seen you create from this studio. And with that, we can show Julius again from his real
square rectangular head again.
And I'm trying to get. Can I get this other camera? No, this is wrong.
And my little normal buddy here, pixel art normal buddy.
Oh yeah, I can show myself from this camera perspective again.
Infinite regression of Marcus's.
And that's pretty much it. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back whenever we're back. Watch all these channels. You can subscribe to all of them, no matter whether you're watching on YouTube, on Twitch. We have multiple YouTube and Twitch channels. Subscribe to all of them just to be safe. And we're going to see you whenever we see you. And I'm going to leave you with... let's try this.
Oh, wow.
Bye, everyone.
Look at that. Impressive.